Let me ask you a question. Have you ever driven a car with a flat tire? Not completely blown out, but flat enough that you notice it, that you feel it. The steering wheel starts pulling to one side, the ride gets rough, you hear the noise, you know something is wrong. Now, imagine pulling over, getting out of the car, inspecting the tire, and confirming, yep, that's definitely the problem. I have a flat tire. That's awareness. Now, imagine taking the next step to call roadside assistance because you know you can't fix it yourself. Well, that's asking for help. You're aware of the problem. You see you can't solve the problem, so you ask for help to get somebody who can solve the problem. Let's take it one step further. You've pulled over, you've diagnosed the problem, you've called roadside assistance, and when the technician arrives and says, "Good news, I can get you back on the road," you suddenly start making excuses. Maybe I'll wait. Maybe it's not that bad. You know what? I should probably try to figure this out myself. Okay, fine. I'll deal with it next month. It sounds ridiculous, right? Yet, that's exactly what so many ambitious entrepreneurs, executives, and leaders do every single day. You know you're stuck. You know what's not working. You know anxiety, burnout, overwhelm, self-doubt, or constant pressure isn't magically going to go away on its own. You may have even admitted you're stuck, you need help. But instead of following through, fear takes over. Ego takes over. Excuses take over. And what happens? Well, you keep driving on that flat tire, wondering why progress feels so slow, why everything feels harder than it should, and why you're not getting where you want to go. In today's episode, we're talking about why high performers don't become successful because they're fearless. They become successful because they take action anyway. They stop negotiating with fear, stop waiting to feel ready, and they understand that asking for help isn't weakness. It's often the fastest path to getting unstuck and getting to where they desire to go. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstuck High Performer Podcast. My name is Paul Salter. I'm a high-performance hypnotherapist and mindset coach, and I specifically work with CEOs, executives, ambitious entrepreneurs, and professionals just like you who are feeling stuck, consistently underperforming relative to your potential. And I help these individuals begin to not only uncover the beliefs, the behaviors, the emotions that are holding them back, but to begin unlearning them, letting them go, so that they can get out of their own way, lock in, and level up. And I'm so grateful you've joined me for this solo episode. As a reminder, if you're new here, every Monday I have a solo episode that I get really amped for. I put a lot of time, typically the week before, preparing these episodes, excited to record them every time I have the opportunity. And then every Thursday, I bring on a guest. Sometimes it's a fellow coach. Regardless, the person I bring on is wildly successful on paper, but just like you and me, he or she too has had many moments of feeling stuck, uncertain, overwhelmed, anxious, on the verge of burnout, or at rock bottom. And we have a vulnerable, raw, candid conversation about success, achieving next level success, sustaining next level success, the trade-offs, the tolls, and the learning lessons every step of the way. And what I really want you to take away from in this episode is that asking for help, it's not enough. Asking for help on its own is not enough. You have to actually follow through on that help and take action. One of the problems I've noticed, and I'll unpack it more, is when you ask for help, maybe you have an initial call, a discovery call, or a conversation with a peer. That conversation in and of itself releases a little bit of that pent up pressure. You feel a little sense of relief, maybe a little validation, even inspiration, because you've released a little of that pressure that's been building for months, years. But that's problematic because what happens is the release, that slight release of pressure that's been building, begins to convince you, you know what, actually, I can do this on my own. Or, you know what, it's not as bad as it seems. But the truth is, whether it's in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, you're right back to feeling the way you were feeling. Anxious, isolated, overwhelmed, burnt out, fearful, worried. Or those feelings are amplified even more. Your next level of success, it's not blocked by a lack of knowledge. It's not blocked because you're any less intelligent, capable, or motivated than anybody else. You're simply waiting to feel ready to take action, and therefore avoiding a decision, avoiding taking action, specifically the decision and action you need to fully engage in the accountability, support, or mentorship that's necessary to get you out of your own way and where you need to go. Quick reminder before we dive into the meat and potatoes: Instagram, YouTube, even TikTok. I'm there posting content multiple times per day at the Paul Salter. If you're enjoying the content here on the podcast, you're going to get clips and deeper dives, especially on Instagram and YouTube. Again, at the Paul Salter. What I want to present to you is an acronym of A's. 4 stages or the 4 A's of getting unstuck. And I'm going to weave in some stories and metaphors to help you specifically identify where in this unstuck journey you currently are. And I'm then going to identify the specific place in that journey that most people, and most people don't know this, but most people make their biggest mistake. So step 1 is awareness. Duh. And you're listening to this podcast because, well, A, you're here or past the stage, but B, there is at least a part of you that is aware that something in your life right now is not working. Feels off. Maybe there's lingering frustration, anxiety. Maybe you're becoming more aware of some of your tendencies of coping, numbing, or avoiding emotion or difficult conversations. Maybe your perfectionistic tendencies or procrastination propensity is beginning to interfere with progress more than ever before. So you're here with a level of awareness, and kudos to you. In order to begin progressing on your journey of getting unstuck, you have to then take that awareness, and on to stage 2, you have to accept how you are feeling. Accept the emotions that are present, not repress, not avoid. Go back and listen to episode 168 where I do a deep dive with Kobe. His biggest evolution as a man and therefore as a basketball player was his ability to transform from emotional repression and reactivity to emotional awareness and acceptance. Must listen, episode 168. So again, you need to accept that you're the bottleneck. You're the person, the reason you are not getting back to the next level. You're holding yourself back, and perhaps a better word in place of acceptance is just full fucking Jocko style ownership. Ownership that you're the problem. And candidly, accepting that you are the biggest threat and challenge to your success can be difficult to do. Yet, once you do so, and you stop fighting it, a door of opportunity opens, and you can now with more clarity than ever before, begin to see the support, the opportunities, and the resources that are available to you to begin taking action. And part of that action plan, stage 3, the third A, is asking. Asking for help, asking for accountability, asking for mentorship, asking for leadership, asking for guidance. Asking for help accelerates results. I'm biased as a coach. I get it. Coaching and asking for help has radically changed my life, radically improved my life, dramatically altered the trajectory of my life. And candidly, I've reflected on this quite a bit. I don't know when or where I fell in love with asking for help. There's still a part of me that's stubborn and wants to figure things out on himself. There's been a couple pivotal pieces of feedback from mentors along the way. I guess just my upbringing in youth and competitive sports. I always had coaches. I always had, I had a pitching coach when I played baseball. I would put in extra reps with the quarterback coach or put in extra reps with the tennis coach in high school. So coaching was just always kind of ingrained into part of the journey, part of the process. And I understand that's not the same for everybody, especially if you didn't play sports or you didn't have role models with coaches. But at stage 3 of getting unstuck, so we go from awareness to acceptance and ownership to asking for help. Here's where one of the many challenges begins to kick in for most people, though. Once you get to this stage where you acknowledge you need to ask for help, you begin to go to battle with yourself, specifically battle with your ego. And some of the common thoughts that you might experience may sound like this. Well, wait, I should be able to figure this out on my own. What will people think of me if I ask for help? I don't need a therapist. I don't need a coach. I don't want to look weak. No, you know what? I don't need help. What if I ask for help and it doesn't work? The irony here is that the few people you admire most on and offline, they all have coaches, mentors, advisors, therapists, consultants, support systems. You don't admire self-made people. You admire people whose support systems may be invisible, but trust me when I say those support systems are there. And let me challenge your relationship with hiring a coach or asking for help. If it is something you've never done, or maybe you haven't had a positive experience, which candidly happens, though I would shift you and challenge you to find the positives. I've talked before. I had what I would deem a very porous coaching experience that I invested a lot of money in, but there were some silver linings that made up for the experience. Learning lessons I still apply to this day. So therefore, I've had to really shift how I even talk about it. In fact, it was a positive experience. Was it coaching? No. Was it more teaching? Yes. Did it take a lot more work to unearth some of those, diamonds in the rough, if you will? It did. And it was worth it. So think about it like this. Imagine that you are standing at the base of a mountain that you have never climbed. And this summit represents your next level of business, leadership, peace, fulfillment, more income. Of course, you can attempt to summit this mountain alone. But what if someone who has already climbed that mountain offers to guide you? Well, your ego will immediately chime in and say, hey, wait a second. I got this. I should be able to figure this out on my own. Thanks, but no thanks. Yet simultaneously, there's another voice. A wiser voice within you would say, why would I ignore a map from someone who's already been there? And in this situation, the goal of the guide isn't to pick you up and carry you up the mountain. The goal is to help you avoid spending years getting lost and taking the wrong path. So at this point, I've talked about the 3 stages. There's awareness, there's acceptance, there's asking for help. And what I have found most interesting, a lot of people do get to this stage of asking for help, but where they remain stuck is they never follow through on that help. They don't actually act upon the help. They don't actually act upon the assistance. Sorry, I had to. You know I like my alliterations. And that's the sad, disheartening, and disappointing part of the journey. Because for the reasons I shared at the beginning of this conversation, more often than not, when you get to a place of accepting you need and you're ready to ask for help, and then you ask for help, even in just a conversation, you begin to release a little bit of that pressure that's built up. And that can feel like such a tremendous relief, such a stark contrast to the pressure you've been carrying on a typical basis, that it invites in doubt and second guessing around asking for help. The ego's allowed to take back over. You know what? Wait a second. It's not as bad as I thought it was. I got this. Or this conversation's great. I'm inspired. I'm reinvigorated. But again, within a couple of days, a couple of weeks, you're right back there. And, I just had a handful of examples of this as a coach talking with individuals in the past month. There's one person in particular, a fellow coach actually. He reached out to me about 12 months ago. And it was more of just, some curiosity. I'm enjoying your content. Thank you. Shared a little bit, got a little open about some of the things he was dealing with and how the podcast had helped him. Sweet. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Thank you for listening. And over the course of the next, 8-9 months, there were several touch points, specific questions or comments related to a particular episode, things that resonated with him. And one particular issue he was having that he reached out, shared a little bit more, seeking my advice on. So we had just a quick chat in, the Instagram DMs. And then I didn't hear from him for a few months. And now we're about 12 months since that original touch point. And he reached out to me asking how to schedule a formal coaching discovery call. He acknowledged, hey, I can't do this on my own. I'm struggling. I'm ready to get started. I've got the funds available. I have the time available. Let's do this. And the reason I say I knew all this information is it's simply part of my coaching application. We had a great call. There was the energy was right. There was a mutual confidence in one another and excitement to begin working together. And when it got time to get that first call scheduled, what do you think happened? The excuses came in. Suddenly, issues that he had clearly defined were not issues even prior to the call were issues. It's not the right time. I got to double check the investment. Maybe next month. And this is just one example, and by no means am I picking on this individual. In fact, just this last month, I've had several individuals complete the coaching application, tell me they're interested, and then fail to follow through and even schedule the coaching discovery call. And that's life. There's 8 billion people. Sometimes life is a game of numbers. Yet it resonates so much because I know how fucking painful it is to feel stuck, to know you need help, to be willing to ask for help, and then to convince yourself at the last hour you can do it yourself. And what's so problematic about not only remaining stuck because you didn't actually follow through on getting the help you asked for, is that experience in and of itself begins to erode your confidence. I mean, you didn't follow through. You weren't a man or a woman of your word. It erodes self-trust. And that just amplifies the cocktail of emotions you're currently experiencing that are so challenging and further pushes you in the wrong direction. And I think the point that so many people make is, or the mistake they make rather, is you ask for help and you expect it to be easy moving forward. Finally, okay, hey, like I admit it, I need help. Can you help me? You can help me. Okay, great. And then you have this false expectation that things are going to be easy moving forward. No, they're going to be uncomfortable. The person you have asked to help you is going to save you an immense amount of time, energy, hardship, challenge, money, frustration, mistake making. And it's still going to be hard because you are stuck, you are struggling, and that stuckness in the struggle has become normal. In a sick, twisted way, it's become comfortable. So asking for help to get yourself out of that, to rise up, is asking yourself to step into the unknown, out of this experience that is comfortable, familiar, and predictable. And your subconscious will deploy several incredibly crafty excuses and feelings of fear to prevent that and keep you stuck. So we need to have the fear conversation. And again, just to clarify, step 4 is actually following through. There, I got the A in there with actually, but it's the follow through. And the fear conversation is simply a reminder. Fear is not the problem. Your relationship with it is. One of the biggest misconceptions about successful people is that they eventually become fearless. They don't. They simply stop expecting fear to disappear before they take action. The entrepreneur launching a new business feels fear. The CEO making a major hiring or firing decision feels fear. The executive stepping into a bigger leadership role feels fear. The person reaching out for coaching or mentorship feels fear. The difference, however, is that they don't interpret fear the same way that most people do. Most people think, I feel afraid, therefore something must be wrong. Elite performers think, I feel afraid because this matters, this is meaningful. Fear often appears whenever you're standing on the edge of growth. So I encourage you to view it as a sign, validation, a northern star, if you will, that you're on the right track. Remember, your brain is wired for safety. So anything out of the ordinary is going to trigger a fear-like reaction and sensation. Lean into that. See it as validation, a reminder that you're on the right track. Begin to see it as an indication of something meaningful, not something wrong, not something bad. Now, here's where things get interesting. The kicker, if you will. Fear, it rarely sounds like fear. It sounds like logic, even noble or patient at times. Fear says, let's wait until things settle down. Let's think about it a little longer. Okay, thank you. Let's revisit this next chapter. Let's do a little more research first and really try to find where it makes the most sense, where it is the perfect time. And I want you to notice what's happening. Fear isn't saying no. Fear is saying not yet. And for many people, not yet becomes years, becomes never. Quick pause for a moment. If you are listening, we're 20 minutes in, and this is speaking to you at a deep level, you're realizing that you are stuck. You haven't acted upon the help you have asked for and sought after. And you've been stuck, struggling, quietly suffering for months, even years. This is the kind of problem that I help high performers just like you solve every day. I work privately with high performers who are tired of getting in their own way and ready for their next level. If this sounds like you, I encourage you to pause this episode, visit the link in the show notes to apply for one-on-one coaching, to complete the application, and then when you hear back from me, to take action and follow through on scheduling the coaching discovery call. I look forward to meeting you there. I want to tell you a quick story. I, in the beginning of this year, joined a mastermind. It was an investment, one that I thought was fair. The details incredibly clear, the value I would receive clearly communicated, and just like deep in my soul, I'd spent a lot of journaling and reflecting, and this was just like kind of be continuing to come on my radar. I felt this was the next chapter for me. And I also felt this immense energy in my stomach and tightness in my chest while on the phone with the guy who was getting ready to close me so I could give him my credit card information and sign up. And it was an experience like nothing I have ever experienced before. Was it fear? Was it excitement? Was it opportunity? Was it alignment? And it really shook me. And it sounds silly to be sharing this out loud. I just want to be vulnerable about what transpires sometimes in situations like this. There was a part of me that deeply knew I could stand in trial and articulate with the utmost conviction, this investment will help me tremendously, professionally and personally. And there was excitement, but it was unknown. It was stepping into foreign territory. And the experience that I felt physically was so real, so raw, so visceral. I remember I got off the phone and I needed 24 hours. And I told the guy, I will call you back at this time tomorrow. Just give me 24 hours to work through this, just triple check everything. And I was already starting kind of down the excuse track, if I'm honest. But I remember after that call, I literally just went out of my office and my girlfriend was out on the couch. And I just literally laid down, put my head on her and just sat and breathed for a few minutes. Because the intensity of all of these emotions, the energy physically moving through my body, I could have easily labeled that as fear and given in and said, this is a clear sign that I should not do this. I chose the other approach. I chose to view it as excitement. I just sat with it. I acknowledged how I was feeling. I accepted how I was feeling. I took ownership of how I was feeling. And that next day, a few hours earlier than originally scheduled, I called the gentleman back, handed over my credit card, and I hit the ground running, dove in to the group. And since then, I've made incredible relationships. The group has benefited me personally, professionally, relationally. And the group I'm talking about is the M19 Business Golf Mastermind that I had the privilege of interviewing the founder, Ryan Pineda, that's a good question. I believe episode 161 of the podcast. But my point in sharing that story is that I felt fear for something, again, I could confidently with the utmost conviction articulate would be good for me. But every time you're stepping into the unknown, every time you're asking for help, every time you're investing financially, energetically, emotionally, or from a time perspective, you're going to have some form of defense deployed by your subconscious, trying to keep you stuck in a state of inaction. You have to act anyway. And this is a skill. Again, the fear doesn't go away, but learning how to act in the presence of it is a skill that can be strengthened with repetition. And one of the things you need to understand to give yourself a better chance at winning these battles is that when you feel stuck, yet begin to see a clear path forward, your mind becomes like an elite attorney. It will suddenly craft incredibly convincing arguments about why you should not take action now. And your mind might begin to sound like, I'll wait until things slow down. I need more information. Let me talk to my wife or my husband about it. Might be too expensive. I really need to think about it. Can we talk in another month? Yet, you've been saying those same things for months, years. And if your current thinking can solve the problem, wouldn't you have solved it by now? And look, I candidly shared, I started to go in that direction. But through practice, through repetition, through mistakes, I've learned how to quickly identify that, right the ship, and move in the correct aligned direction. Because I've learned the hard way, and I imagine you have too, there is such a cost to acknowledging you need help, even asking for it and not following through. You waste years overthinking, waiting, staying stuck. You never get that time back. Especially time with your kids at those particular ages. Let that sink in for a minute. Remaining stuck has a major opportunity cost in terms of business growth, getting that promotion, increasing your income, experiencing more confidence, more peace, more fulfillment, the ideal relationship with your wife, with your children. All of that is delayed because you delay. And as I alluded to earlier, the more you continue to not take action, the more you continue to reinforce your identity as someone who does not follow through. And that becomes a real prison, a real mental hell, if you will. And as you continue to not actually follow through on asking for help and acting upon it, you continue to carry that weight, that burden alone. It's heavy, exhausting, isolating. And this paves the way for burnout, hypervigilance, anxiety, and an almost guaranteed emotional implosion. And then lastly, if you continue on this path, maybe you will achieve your goals. But you'll do so without enjoyment, and you'll likely lose yourself along the way, and you'll likely lose the key relationships that you continue to say were most important to you, but your actions didn't support. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one simple question. Where in your life do you already know what needs to happen next? Where in your life do you already know you need to ask for help, but you're waiting to feel ready before you do it, before you take action on that help? Readiness is one of the biggest lies that fear ever sells us. The entrepreneurs, executives, leaders, and high performers you admire aren't successful because they felt more confident than you. They're successful because they stopped treating fear as a stop sign and started seeing it as a signal that growth was nearby. Remember, awareness isn't enough. Admitting you need help isn't enough. Even asking for help isn't enough. The transformation happens when you follow through. So if you've been driving around with the same flat tire for months, or maybe years, stop convincing yourself it will somehow fix itself. Reach out, make the call, send the message, hire the coach, join the program, have the conversation. Because your next level isn't waiting on more certainty. It's waiting on your willingness to take action before certainty arrives. And the sooner that you stop trying to do all of this alone, the sooner that you'll discover that asking for help was never a sign of weakness. It was a decision that finally got you moving again. I hope you feel inspired after listening to today's conversation. And my ask of you today is to share this conversation with somebody in your circle who you know needs to follow through, who needs the help, who's aware and ready to accept the help, but needs to follow through. Share this conversation. And if this episode resonated with you, take that seriously. There's a part of you that knows it's time to change. And I encourage you to visit the show notes, to apply for one-on-one private coaching, to schedule that coaching discovery call with me so we can discuss what needs to be done and begin doing the work to get you unstuck so you can lock in and level up. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next episode.